2018, I'm challenging myself to ride a motorcycle every day and document every day that I do. Hashtag 365 motorcycle. This is 2 days of this journey where I compare my AT to the NC off-road.
Back, yep. Today is Friday the 15th of June. Yep. And I am back on Norm, the AT. Had a meeting today. I went out to lunch with some peeps. Dropped off the top box with my computer and stuff, and now I'm gonna ride down what I like to call the worst road in Sacramento County, Kiefer. It's a little small section, but it's pretty bad and chewed up. I have videos of me going on my dirt bike down here. Gotta remember to be in second gear, because first gear, when I get throttle happy or whack the throttle, definitely throws me off a little bit. I wonder what's going on down here, man. Looks like some type of probably up to no good. We'll see. Most part, if you see somebody on this road and they don't look like they're birding, they're probably doing something they shouldn't. Or, I mean, in a cage where they got a lifted out truck. This Toyota, I think this guy like freaking lives down here or something. This guy's just gonna walk the road. Easy. You guys ain't gonna dump all that shit, are you? Just making sure. Yeah. No, it's his work truck. Well, he probably comes down here because this is where he dumps all his shit. Alright. So, just saw two rabbits here. So you can see like some of these holes, man. These are the holes we come through in the winter sometimes. And come through over here, it's pretty deep. But you look at that side, man, that is still wet in spots. And that's the secondary small hole. The big hole, from what I remember, is up here. See up here, more garbage that people dump. Be interesting to see if my hands hurt as much as they did yesterday. Yesterday, I think it's because I was wearing different gloves that I'm not used to. Time will tell. I also remember to close my face shield. I don't know if I talked about that, but I took a bee or wasp in the face and it stung me kind of by the temple. Last time that happened was probably like 2015 or even before that. I got stung. I had my face shield open before the filming days because it would have been pretty comical. I had the face shield open. Something flew in, caught it, and it just was up by the top of my head, just stinging me like nonstop. And it took a few seconds or a minute to get that pull over safely, get the gloves off, get the helmet off. And I probably got stung like at least a dozen times, man. I think he was just pissed off. Alright, with that, peace out. And we're back. Yep. Beach Road again, 15th, Friday, June. Yep. And I was thinking about running this road maybe today on this bike, and then running it tomorrow on the NC. But that's if life doesn't get in the way. Yep. So. Pretty much that. So maybe I'll film this home segment just in case I do that. I can talk through stuff. So so far so good. I'm probably going around 30 miles an hour. Probably minus. That's about what I hit. Like I said, this bike is stuff like this. I've already ridden down this road on this bike from what I remember, and I've ridden on Young NC, but not back to back. But I can clearly tell you this bike is. So far from what I remember, this bike's easier to ride. You can definitely feel it is a big bike, but not like in a not in an overwhelming way, if that makes sense. But as far as when I go, riding this is what I remember from riding the NC. The NC definitely feels smaller. I mean, there's definitely less bike between your legs. Even with the front of this is it's bigger, it's taller, the bars are bigger. It just feels like a more massive animal, if you will. I did not take any pressure out of the tires. And what I noticed from Prairie City yesterday is things are getting sandier. I can even see here, more gray dirt. So try not to, like I said, bite it by myself. Somewhere, this is where I remember, this is where it gets, one of these spots gets a little more chewed up, but it looks like the cars and trucks have smashed back down the rivulets. Shit, it's right here, actually. Woo! So yeah, that was a lot easier to do that than it would have been on the NC. And I know, people, I read all the reviews, and I never really comment on boards. I listen on boards, and it's interesting to see folks talk about the difference between a 17 and a inch rim up front wheel and a 21 or even a 19. And my limited experience riding off pavement is that initially I didn't think it made a big deal, but now I'm starting to realize as I ride two bikes that are larger, I used to think that let's say like this, I used to think that 250 was easier to ride than an NC because it was a 250, right? That was where I thought the biggest thing factored in. But now I'm starting to realize it's probably because of the wheel setup. I mean, in addition to the bike being a little more meant to ride off pavement than the NC was. But then again, I said I don't think I was giving enough credit to wheels, wheel size. I was like, yeah, that's what people say, but you can make anything do what you want to do. But definitely seems like when you hit a big hole, 21 takes it a lot easier and more in stride than the than the NC, or probably anything with a 17 for that matter. I used to ride my 700GS twin down here every once in a while. Not too often. Mrs. Smith has ridden hers down here, but that's got, if I remember correctly, that's got a 19 up front and a 17 in the rear. And it's been so long ago, I can't really comment on what's better than what's better than what. But I said so far, so good on this. I said I'm not a speed demon. I'm averaging somewhere in the 20s, mid 20s for going through this. And like I said, honestly, for me, that's totally fine. You know, I don't envision myself ever going down roads like this trying to bust through going, you know, 40 miles an hour. Really not that good or that interested in crashing. So, yep. Hands feel a little better today, but I'm not actually covering the brake and the clutch all the time. So that could be a reason why. I just think the way, like I said, if I rotate the controls a little further down and or the bars forward a little bit of both, being able to cover the controls will feel more comfortable than they currently do. It's not bad, but if I had to ride like this for a few hours, I think my hands would be fully exhausted. They were pretty tired yesterday at Prairie City just after, you know, a half hour or so. Yeah, what else? Bikes, like I said, easy to stand up on. You know, it seems like the position fits me pretty well. You know, just stock or however I receive the bike used. So, but then again, I'm not one of those guys that really makes like a ton of adjustments to a bike as soon as I get it. I like to ride it around, and then honestly, a lot of times I just never make an adjustment unless it's something that I feel is kind of bothering me, like you know, like these controls are. So, see how it is through the big rocks here. I always slow down for this. These aren't that big of rocks, but worst thing about that is when you come out, it's a lot of loose gravel. Looks like they did a prescribed burn here or had a fire or a little bit of both, and based upon the burn pattern, it looks to me like it was a not planned for fire. Used to be a fire guy, probably for 15 or years or so of my life, so I miss that sometimes. All right, well, that's where I'm at. Really enjoyed that. Pretty easy to ride. Except for the coughing. Be interesting to see if I run the NC out there tomorrow, how I feel about the NC and what I can tell you. But I think what I can tell you, you know, is the NC is not going to be as good of a bike going off pavement. I think it'll do it. It has done it for me. But what I would say is that, you know, it does it when it has to do it. It's not meant to do it, if that makes sense. So, all right, well, rather than talk about the NC now, I'll talk about it when I talk about it. So with that, peace out. Back. Yep. So I'm doing the Nice Road backwards again. I just filmed this, but as you know, my Sena, all the Sena 10Cs I use, Mrs. Smith has one, I have one, and this is my second replacement, so I've used 3. They all have glitches, so I thought I was recording here, and then when I turned the camera off, it made like a weird beeping noise. It didn't say recording stopped. So I don't want to turn this about the Sena. It's about the Africa Twin and riding it off pavement as compared, hopefully, to the NC, which I'm going to take out tomorrow. So Mrs. Smith's up to it. I was going to get her maybe to ride this off down this road, although I think it's a little tall for her, and I don't think she really wants to do that, but we'll see. But anyway, if not, I'll come out and I'll try to do a run on this, on just the NC, and I'll play these back to back. So yep. Hit a little bit of gravel there, but it'll recover. Yeah, coming out of those holes, there's a fair amount of loosey-goosey sand and rock, and yeah, almost bought it, but live to keep it upright. So that's good. So yeah, so one thing I'm finding I hit neutral more on this bike, and that's probably just because I'm not used to it. But as far as you know, how it feels riding, it's definitely a big bike. People say it's a big bike that rides like a little bike. I can see what they're saying, but you know, it's definitely feels bigger than my 250, and it feels bigger than the NC, even though weight-wise, I'm gonna guess. they're probably not too far off from each other. I think the NC is 470 and this is probably 5 something, and then you add bars and a bunch of other crap on, and that probably weighs itself out. So I'm gonna guess this is about 25 pounds more. Yeah, but the riding position is real good on it, other than saying I'm having a hard time for some reason, probably because of small hands, covering the clutch and the brake lever with 2 fingers and not having my hands get fatigued. So I think I can make a minor adjustment with the bars I was saying yesterday, and or the controls themselves, just rotate them a slight bit forward, and that maybe would help things. And if not, I would get some maybe adjustable levers. But I'm not one of those guys that really like monkeys around. I was going to hit sand there and spin it. Monkeys around too much with the controls of a bike. When I first get it, I like to ride it for a while, but I already know something is not agreeing with me with how these controls are set up for me to be able to grip them with 2 fingers. One other thing, I guess, I was doing the AltRider before. I was talking about I hit a big enough ravine, that rivulet, erosion crack, whatever you want to call it, than I would have liked to, and this bike handled it very well. And I've done the same thing with the 250. The NC doesn't handle them as well, and I'm sure there's a number of reasons to that, but I'd probably think one is the 17-inch wheel up front. And time will tell tomorrow when I ride both these bikes back to back, right? Or one day to the other. I should be able to give more insight on that. But I used to think, like, when I would compare that bike NC to the 250, it had more to do with the size of the bike and the sheer weight, why the 250 could handle those ruts better, and suspension and everything like that. And I discounted the wheel size, and I know everyone writes about like 21-inch wheels, like really needed for an off-road bike, and I used to be like, oh, that's bullshit. For what I ride, it doesn't make a difference. But I think it actually does make a difference. Even if it doesn't make a difference riding wise, I can tell you it makes a difference tire selection wise. It's hard to find good tires for the NC700X that are pretty aggressive because of that 17-inch wheel. Most of them are coming with a 19-inch front if you want more aggressive tires. That's what's on Mrs. Smith's 700 GS, and I think her 650 as well. Both have a 19 front and a 17 in the rear. This has got a 21 and an 18, so I do think that helps it to roll over the bumps a little easier. But yeah, compared to my 250, that's a different story. It could be because that bike's lighter, I'm used to riding it, but like on this bike, when I almost bought it in the sand and gravel, way more of a pucker factor. 250 I pucker up a little bit, but I usually am fairly confident I can save it. This, I'm afraid when it goes sideways in the sand or the gravel, I'm going to be picking it up. And who knows, maybe that'll come with more experience, more time behind the bars, maybe I'll get better. But that's my take on it. Right now, yesterday I was riding around with the torque setting off, and I was finding I was getting a lot of slippage, like going up hills and stuff. So I have it on the setting that will limit the amount of wheel slippage, and I actually think I like that a little better so far, even riding off road. I don't know if I mentioned I got the ABS off. The feel on the rear brake of this compared to the NC, I can tell you for sure that is a world of difference. Like this bike, I can tap down on the rear pedal and I can easily lock up the rear brake or drag the rear wheel if I'm going down a hill. Super easy. NC, not so much. I did a mod on mine. I got a block that was meant to go on I think a BMW brake pedal, fit over the round lever pedal that's on this bike, not this bike, the NC.
So here is a top-down picture of the stock NC700X brake pedal. I planned on making a video dedicated to this brake pedal mod, but it never happened. So here it is explained now. So the stock diameter of the pedal was too tight, so it needed to be drilled out. And this is the final product. I clamped it in a vise, got a drill bit, started drilling, and that's the end result. So the brake pedal mod made a huge difference in improving the feel of the rear brake on young NC700X, but it's still nowhere as good as the rear brake feel on the Africa Twin.
Drilled that out, put it on. It's helped out enormously, but still don't have the feel that that this bike has for sure. So, obviously, it totally makes sense. This bike is probably going to be a bigger winter off-road. I mean, it's set up to be a serious off-road bike. So, no surprise that, spoiler alert, probably as far as off of pavement riding goes, this bike is going to be the winner. We'll see if I actually go through with riding the NC tomorrow and doing that series. Then I can talk more about street riding and daily riding and commute like that. I'm going to be doing probably a pretty big trip, multiple days on the AT this year. If you watch my channel, you'll see I did 10,000 miles on the NC last year, and so I definitely have a lot of opinions about that bike as compared to this one. So, all right, well, hopefully you find this helpful. Again, this is just my thoughts. I suggest, like with anybody else, man, you get multiple inputs and read things. I think one of the advantage for me, and why I'm going to try to do this tomorrow to the next day, my ideal thought was to do this back to back, do a run out on the NC and one on the Africa Twin, so I could really get a feel for back to back, right from one bike to another. But I don't know if that'll happen. But I think one of the good things about me saying some stuff about this, I actually own both bikes, and I own them both at the same time. A lot of NCs I see now for sale by me are folks that are getting rid of them because they got an Africa Twin, and who knows, that might happen. At some point I'm probably going to want to get rid of something in the garage because it's full. Also, try not to be biased. I mean, I'm a Honda guy for sure. I'm reviewing 2 Hondas, but I spend a lot of time in the saddle with the with the NC, and I really like that bike. So I'm going to try not to sing its praises more than it's worth. So, all right, again, well, probably too long rambling on with that. Peace out. And we're back. Still the 15th of June, and I'm taking Young NC out. I was going to do the same route sections that I did, try to do my comparison, but if you look ahead, there's a lot of smoke, and that's in the general vicinity of where I'm going to be riding. So might not be able to do it if there's a big wildfire, grassland fire, but I guess time will tell. So, all right, check in when I hit the dirt. Peace out. And we're back. I did not imagine what somebody would have to do to drive a Prius off into the field over there. I mean, that road, it's not raining, there's nothing happening. I've ridden there a million times. You got to be doing something really stupid to drive your Prius through those poles and through a barbed wire fence. I mean, my God, man, ridiculous. So yeah, again, I don't know what I recorded on the AT. I might have to just make do with doing the first section of my route, which will suck, and then I'd have to come out here tomorrow to do the other part, because I think even if it's not burning up where I am, it's going to be smoky as hell, unless I can get this thing out pretty quick. But Doubt they'll get it as quickly out as the NC is quick with me operating it. All right, well, again, with that, peace out. And we're back. Yep. So I am ready to start my Meese Road run on Young NC. I stopped at the Pavement end sign to take a picture because I think I have one of the 250 here and the AT, but none of Young NC. So yeah, and away we go. So I ran a little section of dirt already on Young NC, another crappy road by us, Kiefer Road. And I already thought of some things, but I figure I'll talk about them, in this section. Of course, didn't charge my camera last night. I've been using it a bunch today, so we'll see. So, starting from the ergonomics of this bike, it's funny. I thought for sure I'd be like, yeah, I like the AT a lot better, but one thing, I gotta scratch my face here. One thing I can tell you about this bike, they write about it all the time, but it's totally true. The way the engine is set up in this bike, it totally has a low center of gravity. This bike feels really stable, not top heavy. Now, granted, everything I'm gonna say here, I've had this bike, I just looked, I've probably ridden this bike 30,000 miles or plus, and I've probably ridden the AT about 1,000, right? So maybe too early to do a review of what I feel about them by dirt, but oh well. I think I could still tell you what I've learned so far because I've ridden the AT a fair amount off of off the pavement already. So yeah, one thing I'll tell you is the rear brake pedal on this bike absolutely sucks. Even with my block, I'll take a picture of it. I was going to do a mod video of how I did it, but compared to the AT, it's terrible. I have to almost bend and press down even on the block. What I did is I put a block around the brake pedal, which is a round little dowel, if you will, and it makes it square, so it brought it up a little higher. So is it easier to find? Yeah, for sure. But do I still have to bend my whole body to hit the brake and really press on it to apply it? Yeah, the Africa Twin I can just tap and lock the rear up and slow it down, and it gives me way more control. Second thing about this bike I could tell you is the riding position. I'm 5'9", 30-inch inseam, so I'm a shorter guy, and I find on the AT I can stand up totally perfect. This bike I have to hunch over a little bit to to get a riding position I like. Let's see. 17-inch wheel for right now, it's not really bothering me, but I'm not going to try to hit the same holes that I did before just to see if what I'm saying is true. But I do think 21-inch rims definitely take more of the of the bounce, or go through a hole when you don't see it a little easier. As far as the power goes on this bike, again, ridden this bike a lot more, but I actually like the power on this bike. It's only around 50 horsepower. I didn't buy the AT because I was ever this bike is underpowered and I don't like it. The reason I bought the AT is, number one, I had money to buy the AT. And number two, I was thinking I'm at the point now where I want to do more off-road riding, off-pavement riding, and I could spend some money on the NC to, make him more roadworthy. So this is I'll bounce down this here. Ugh. Or, I could buy another bike, and I decided to buy the AT. So as far as suspension goes, this bike definitely does not have. That was definitively. No, I just record as I'm riding here, so you get all my stupid Mike Smith isms and screw ups. But hey, it is what it is. But yeah, this Suspension's not the greatest on this bike, but it wasn't meant to be a an off-road bike. No matter what you what you want to believe. But I think like the type of riding I'm doing right now, I mean, it could do this without a problem. See, what else can I talk about on this bike? I'm way more comfortable on this bike, which is funny. I thought for sure the 250 I'm definitely the most comfortable on going down this road, but this bike, I think probably because I've ridden it more and the center of gravity is lower, I feel more definitely more comfortable on it. But it'll take some time, I guess, to ride the AT more norm and see if I feel that way in a little bit of time. But I'll tell you, the riding norm, only having norm for 1,000 miles, I still am happy with the way I feel on norm. I think this is a Kestrel out here. That's cool. Can't stop to really look though, because I could crash. So I guess, if anything comes about the ride, I could talk about that. But so keep in mind, I guess, this bike is less stock than the AT is. Talk about what this bike has on it. This bike that I think make a difference as far as off-road riding goes, or off-pavement riding. Definitely bigger foot pegs. I bought SW Motec foot pegs on here. There's no way I think I could ride this well or this comfortably on this road with with those stock little dowel dowel foot pegs. Also on both these rides I'm running manufacturer's pressure on the tires, so that's 36-42. I think there could be some savings or better traction if I didn't if I down pressured. As far as other mods go, both the bikes have crash bars on them. Both have brush guards for a little bit more protection for dropping the bike over. Both have skid plates. The AT had a skid plate. This bike did not. I've actually seen photos and heard stories about people cracking the engine case. I guess that would be like where the cylinder is on this bike, because it's so low, and if you hit a big rock or something, that's the point that takes impact. So I bought, again, there weren't a lot of plates at that time, I bought a SW Motec plate. But I also feel, if you're riding reasonable amount off-road, you might want to get better protection for the AT, as well. But like I said, other than the real downside being on this bike, I can hardly even lock the rear up, and I got to bend my leg and twist it so I don't get a lot of control. A little bit of goofiness with the ergonomics that I think if I put some risers on, if I wanted to, would be much better. And probably, I said, you'd need to do if you want to do a lot more riding, I think you'd want to upgrade the suspension. This thing definitely doesn't take the big hits well at all. And then tires. I mean, tires is a big limiting factor here. If they would have put a 19 up front on this bike, oh my god, I think you'd have so much better selection of tires. And yeah, and I know, like, this is, again, my opinion, so I know there's people who are running certain tires on this and it's fine and stuff like that, but this is the world according to Mike Smith. And I'll try to do another one of these later on when I ride the AT more. I said I'm doing a pretty big trip. Hopefully I'll be doing some dirt riding. Gotta concentrate here a little more. So yeah, going through there, I could tell you, like, big rocks on a 17, they don't seem to agree as well, or cobbly rocks. So anyway, I guess that's that as far as it goes. I'll talk about some other stuff, and then I'll maybe try to talk about the pros and cons. But I mean, ultimately, you're gonna get a bike. It's really up to you, and I'll try to what you like, and I'll try to talk through some other things when I am riding home.
Okay, so the sand battery died before I was done running my mouth, so I decided to pick up the conversation the next day.
And we're back. Yep. So today is the 16th of June. It's a Saturday, and yesterday when I was recording, doing my NC versus AT discussion, my camera died right as I was done riding the off-pavement section on the NC, and I had a bunch of great things I wanted to talk about, and now honestly I didn't process yesterday's video, so can't really remember what I talked about or what I didn't. So some of this might be redundant, but you know, hey, sorry, can't help that my mind isn't what it used to be, and from yesterday, which is pretty sad. So I guess one thing I wanted to comment on is exhaust height on both bikes. AT definitely has a higher exhaust. The NC has this really low exhaust, which is, you know, unfortunate. I wish Honda would have put it up a little bit higher, because I've actually, I don't ride this bike hard off-road, but I've gone through some crossings where when I'm coming out of the crossing's deep enough that, you know, the bike exhaust goes underwater, and I've almost stalled the bike, and that happens you know, a few times. I was saying, you know, I think to at least be able to ride the NC off-road capably, you have to put bigger foot pegs on. Trying to stand on those little round foot pegs, that's what I remember them being, is pretty hard, and it'd be pretty fatiguing. As far as I was saying, the NC, the thing I forgot about the NC, or wanted to comment on, if I did already, I apologize, is you know, it's the low center of gravity. With the way the engine is configured here and having the frunk, it is bike really feels stable. It's not you know, top heavy at all. The AT is definitely easy bike, easier to ride than I thought it would be compared to the like 250 that I have. But definitely, you know, the bike has a lot more weight up top because it's got the gas tank up there, and I guess the way the parallel twin is configured in the case, the cylinders are upright, whereas this bike, they're canted forward. I probably mentioned this already. I think the NC, you know, if you're doing a lot of off-road or off-pavement riding, getting a skid plate is I feel is a must. I said I've seen some bikes when I was originally looking to purchase mine used. So some bikes that actually cracked the case in, you know, in a corner or something because they hit a rock and it took a piece of the case off and they had to get welded. So the amount of stuff that I hear hitting the skid plate, because definitely too, this bike has less ground clearance, so if you're going through cobbly stuff, amount of stuff, like I said, here pinging off of that, I'm glad I got a skid plate. So AT has a skid plate, but I put a larger one on anyway for, you know, for more protection. So, and then I said on both bikes I got crash bars. AT's crash bars are definitely way more serious than, you know, this bike, and you know, I put brush guards on each bark busters with the nice aluminum ends, so, you know, if you fall over, you're pretty you know, pretty well protected as you know, as far as that goes. So I don't know, you know, I really don't know what to tell you, you know, which bike is better. I think obviously if you're going to ride hardcore off-road, you get the Africa Twin. You know, if you're gonna, but unfortunately, I think a lot of people buy the Africa Twin, probably even myself included, thinking I'm gonna take all these great adventures, and then, you know, then I don't do it. I'm really hoping to ride that bike a little bit harder off, you know, off pavement than I do the NC. That was the point of getting it. But I guess another thing to factor in is price. NC, you know, AT used right now in my neck of the woods, they're going, if you're lucky, you get one for 10. Usually they're going for like 10.5, 11, you know, maybe 11.5, somewhere in between there. NCs, and I see them pretty much for, you know, people are asking, you know, $6,000 for them, but most of the time when I see them selling, they're selling for around, you know, $4,000, $3,500, $4,500. When I bought mine for $5,000. And that was a few years back, and it's a 15, and I think, you know, out the door price, they're probably over $8,000 at that time. So that's a great thing. You can get into maybe, you know, adventure type riding. But I guess something important I would think of too is the resale value. The resale value on the NC, in my opinion, is really not that great. So thinking you're going to buy, like, if you bought a new one, I think you're going to go to the cleaners. If you think like, well, I'll ride it around for a year and then I will, you know, I'll buy an Africa Twin. But I think if you buy a used one, you know, that's definitely the, you know, the way to go. Whereas an Africa Twin, I think retail resale value's pretty good. I don't think, like, for instance, my bike now has 30,000 miles on it. There's no way I could get I don't think I could get $5,000 for it, and I put a lot of extra stuff on it. I put the skid plate on it, the bark busters, extra power port, some fork guards. I'm trying to think what else. I got clear water lights on this bike. The larger foot pegs, which I mentioned before. I have an extra aftermarket seat, and a bunch of other things that I'm probably forgetting as well. So that's that. But another thing I guess to figure too is I said is height and center of gravity. I have a low seat. My aftermarket seat is a low seat, and that's because Mrs. Smith thought she might ride my bike and wanted a lower seat, and so I can almost flat foot on this bike, almost, with this seat. With the Africa Twin, I definitely am on balls of the feet, and they're pretty close in height, I think, if you have the stock seat. But one other thing to consider too is the center of gravity, for sure. This bike never, I feel like, even when it had the high seat on it, did I ever feel like it was going to tip over, where the AT, when I first got it, sometimes I'd do a shorty stop, and the bike, I definitely would have to catch the bike. So if you're a newer rider and you're not used to doing that, that's something to factor as well. Again, AT's fun as hell to ride off-road, I think, but I'm pretty new on it, and I find at times it's a little much. I grab a handful of throttle, and I get lurched forward or spin the rear wheel pretty hard. You don't get that with the NC. Like, all the power is pretty usable. So there are times where I kind of like I kind of feel like maybe I didn't give the NC enough of a run before I ran out and bought an AT. Unfortunately for the NC700X, nobody really makes like a rally raid kit like they do for the the CB500X, where you can convert it very easily, maybe expensively, but easily, into a more off-road worthy bike. So again, this isn't going to be like, hey, this is the bike you should get. Hopefully what I'm telling you will help you make an informed decision if you're thinking if you're thinking about both bikes. As far as the coolness factor, I like the way both bikes look. If you're not talking to, if you don't have bike friends, everybody that I've met thinks the NC is a cool bike, cool looking bike. I have my bike friends. Some of them make fun of this bike because it is like a parallel twin. It's more like a car engine, has a low red line. It's not very motorcycle like, so it doesn't bother me. But if you're somebody that's got to have a badass bike, that's probably something else maybe you want to factor in as well. But it seems like most of the people that are buying this bike probably are already aware of that. So alright, well, that's that. Probably more rambling than I needed to. I'm on the way to pick up Thumper, the 650 GS. It's got new shoes, new tires, and this bike's getting new tires because they're pretty much shot. I could probably push them a little bit further, but I kind of figure when they're that squared off and worn, no point in trying to get a few extra miles out of them, at the expense of maybe safety and traction and ability to turn properly. So, all right, well, with that, peace out.
Well, that's the end of the comparison. Hope you found it useful or at least entertaining. Thanks for watching. Peace out!